Welcome to the Radiantpreneur Rising Show with me, Jess Tomlinson. Interviews to inspire a new movement of leaders and entrepreneurs. The ones who lead with vulnerability and authenticity, stand in visibility, allowing themselves to truly be seen, are fierce and playful and sexy. Choose business as a spiritual practice. Seek collaboration versus competition. No, giving back is not an option. It's a necessity. They do it their way. They radiate. They rise. Now, let's rise together. All right, welcome everyone back to the Radiantpreneur Rising Show. I am Jess Tomlinson, and I'm so excited to have my friend who I've known for so long. Well, it feels like a long time, maybe it's like 4 years, but for me that feels like a good amount of time, especially because we're part of the same entrepreneurial community, transformational leader community, and I just freaking love her. She's one of my favorite people to talk about business, and I admire her in so many ways, especially around community building. And there's just so many pieces. We're not really sure where the conversation is going to go today, but you guys know how I like to do it. So please welcome Cindy Manit.
Thanks, Jess.
You're
Excited to
welcome.
be here.
Good. I'm so happy to have you here too. I feel a little like hyper right now because as you know, I just moved to back to Las Vegas. And like I
Yeah.
just have like such better energy here. So I'm like realizing
Oh,
that
wow.
getting into this like episode. So don't mind me. I might be like a little
Oh,
bunny rabbit.
great. Yeah. Yeah,
Yay.
excitement is awesome.
Yeah, it's fun. Feels good. Feels good to be here. So, Cindy, I want to start with there's only one question that I ask all my guests who come on this show, and that is how are you leaning into your visibility edges right now in your life and business?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. How am I leaning into my visibility edges? I feel like right now I'm leaning into my visibility edges with wanting to reestablish community, like as a community leader for queer women in leadership and the empowerment world. I mean, it was on hiatus for the past few years just because I got, so busy with my consulting work, my one-on-one consulting work. But now it's like, no, like people are waiting for me to get back into the game of being a leader in this community. And I have been a leader in this community, and people recognize me for that in the San Francisco Bay Area. And it feels like I'm leaning into the edges of it because I'm taking it to a whole nother level of like education, empowerment, and just like, supporting a group of people who want to change the planet. And it feels like a lot of like, it feels a lot as a leader doing that, and there's a lot of vulnerability involved too. So I feel like I'm leaning to that edge right now in this moment. So it's just me learning to accept the riding the wave of it and just like seeing it as it comes, even though it feels scary for me, but it's just taking it like one day at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that and for just sharing, so vulnerably where you're at, because I think so many times there's like a couple of things that I heard you saying that I also know about you. It's like you kind of got away from this piece, that you like know is like part of your soul work, and I know how badass you are, like in the consulting realm as well. But it was like this piece was kind of missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also the piece around like sometimes when it is more of our soul work, and I know you've gone through like an evolution and a journey of your own after your car accident, and just things have really like shifted for you even around like your body and energetically, like it's which I can relate to, going through
Mm-hmm.
so much grief, after my friends died. So I'm curious about like those pieces and how how now is a little bit different than like when you first started out. Like share a little bit about like what your journey was when you first started out, and then how things have kind of like shifted and why they might feel a little bit more vulnerable now.
How things have started out as a business owner.
Yeah, or even you just
Yeah.
mentioned, you know, like you used to do that kind of work and you've always done like the
Yeah.
career, right? In this space of queer women. It's just now like things have changed. We evolved.
Yeah, good question. I think before it was a sense of just like doing it for fun, and it still is fun now, but I feel like before it was just for fun just to fulfill like my own needs in a sense, or for social reasons. But now it feels like there's more of a mission involved. I mean, there was a mission involved before, but like I feel like now I'm like, okay, like I'm really standing in the mission and actually owning it and honoring it. Because I think like a lot of women, a lot of us are told that the type of change work that we really want to do maybe isn't going to be like lucrative, or people don't take it seriously, or there's not going to be people who are interested. You know, we just get these gremlins and these lies that we're told. And so it's like, okay, well, I'll just do this to make my income and the revenue I want to make. But honestly, like doing the consulting work is fun. It's just like, I know I'm on a mission for more support LGBT women and leaders to free their voices, come into their body, move and express themselves, so that way they can be the evolutionary leaders that we do need in the world. And so I feel like from then years ago till now, it's like it's me really like owning it, and I tell this to other leaders too, like, the world right now needs leaders to lead a tribe, to lead a community. There's not many people out there doing that. And so like, why am I not stepping fully into it? Where's this fear coming from? And so I mean, I just have to lead by example and just really own it regardless of the fear. And I don't know, maybe there's some fear around the safety, it's either fear of safety for myself or safety of the people in my community, or like I said, I think it's some of the like lies that we've been told to like not do these types of things, and just really going with what your gut is telling you and just keep moving forward with it, because there's people out there waiting for you. And I know there's people out there waiting for me. So like, why am I just sitting back here in a corner when I could be doing these things? And like, yeah. And then before I wasn't really getting a lot of help. And now it's like, okay, there's people who are like willing to help. Like I've had people tell me like, oh, like, hey, I want to help. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, that's cool. And so when I got that kind of like, no, I'm like, oh, that's awesome, because now I get to have someone else who's excited to help out, or maybe provide other leadership opportunities. And so, yeah, I feel like that's kind of the difference now. And, you do all those things in life, and say maybe you used to work a job that you didn't like, or maybe you were doing something previously that didn't really fulfill you. So like, I think like the consulting work was just like, okay, it was good, but like I was still missing something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I know you and I have talked about that piece around like how it's become pretty like toxic in the entrepreneurial space of like it can become toxic around like you need an urgent problem, you need this, and like we can get so
Right.
in our head around the strategy that we lose that whole bigger why, or like, the values behind like why we do what we do. And we can get so much into that, like, oh my God, I got to make money. And
Right.
there's no room for like the soul piece here, like we have that kind of conditioning, which is like, I view it as so toxic because I see it so much. Like, those are the clients that I love to serve. It's like you literally have like learned everything you need to know, and you're still like, oh my God, I'm not fulfilled. Like, I don't feel it in my body. I don't feel excited anymore. And
Right.
I love that like you've come back around to that. And I'm curious about like, um, you mentioned, well, like, how did you even get to that place? Like, I want to hear about that moment of like, how did you even know? Because I bet you there's people out there that are watching this that are
Yeah.
like, oh man, I'm in that situation. Like, how do I know though, if it's time to like, kind of change directions and like go after building community or whatever, like the bigger mission? Like what was that moment for you like, and how did you decide?
Whew. I think it's because I was in a place that I, again, was feeling like there was a lack of this sort of support.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, being in the Bay Area, it's like I've gone to different like summits, business seminars, right? And different types of groups, but I've always felt there's a missing piece around being able to serve this demographic of people, especially in the self-development world. I don't know. I guess I was just feeling this kind of like this like sadness, and I feel like in this world right now, there's this rising of like of there's this new like evolving of our sexuality and consciousness and our voice that's really being put out there. And so I felt like there wasn't a support space for queer women, especially around leadership. And so there might be some, but you don't see as visibly as others out there, and why it's important. Well, I just feel like anything around sexuality or identity, I think, is really healing.
Mm-hmm.
Being around other women is really healing. But I should say, and for LGBT women, being in community together like that in leadership and empowerment, I think is super healing too, just because it's very specific to that sort of identity, right? And so I just felt like, I don't know, it was just like, I felt like it was time, and it's fun for me too. It's fun for me, and yeah, I just knew. Yeah, I just felt
Yeah.
like, yeah, like this is missing. So who's going to be the leader of this, right? I've been studying more about like tantra and sacred sensuality, and like even then, like in that industry, in that field, I feel like, yeah, sure, it's welcoming of all people, but there's nothing like specific, like focused for like LGBT queer women. So I was like, okay, like there needs to be something, so we could just like if we focus on this group,
Yeah, which I think brings up a point that oftentimes we miss. And I'm curious your thoughts around this, of like creating safety with a specific group so that you can really, like you've narrowed in on like, these are my people, this is who I serve, and then bringing in this sacred sexuality and tantra. And there's, I would imagine like a different kind of safety that can be created
right.
within that. So do you want to speak a little bit to the importance of that, or just your thoughts around?
Yeah, I think it's important to have that, like the commonality with the people in the circle, and then creating that kind of safety, I think is important too, because like as a LGBT person, it's we're constantly in this world. Of course, heterosexuality is a majority, and when you're in a space that's talking about like sexuality or tantra or sensuality, the model is usually made up to be like in a heterosexual model, and that's great and all, and it's just kind of like you still feel like you're not being included in some ways, even though that's not the teacher's intention to not include people, but there's still a sense of like relatability. And then especially around when people are talking about like different energy or how they express themselves like with their gender. It's just, with the language of tantra that I've been experiencing, and like I'm not like a tantra teacher, but like I've been exploring, right? There's a lot of talk about like the masculine and feminine, all this stuff, which is great. But like for a lot of people, I feel like in my community, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work, especially they're two women, right? And so then it's like, where do you go? Where do these people go so they feel like they're included, and then they can go someplace where they can let down their guard or their walls? Because having to tell a group of people that say that you're queer or you're lesbian or gay, whatever it gets tiring after a while.
Yeah, you're
So
just like, damn, can I just like
it's like
not have to?
yeah, you have to explain yourselves all the time, right? So let's say, so just imagining like when you're in a group with other people who are just like you, creates that sense of safety right then and there, just because you know that these people are the same, and then you can just once feel like, oh, like these are my people, and these people have the same experiences as me, and yes, I think it's really important. And then so it's like I want to be able to create that container, also be, bridging it with like entrepreneurship or leadership, sensuality, sexuality. And so it's like I want to create that community where we can really, really be our authentic selves, to show up and be the leaders that we are meant to be, without having that fear of holding back. And so it's like, the San Francisco Pride event I held in June, it's like I wasn't the only one, teaching, but I had, had my co-leader teach some of like the authentic relating work, some of the sensuality work. And then we're bringing in some of like the community building pieces and the voice and expression. So that way it's like, oh yeah, like I can really feel myself. I can feel my spirit. I can feel this sensuality of this group and the specialness of this group too. So hopefully that will make sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I want to come back. I'm just going to say this so that I don't forget. I want to come back to the like masculine feminine piece, because I saw your post on Facebook and I was like, holy shit, she got like, I don't know what it's at now, but you got like 170 comments or something crazy. So I want to talk about that piece, because you're so good at like just opening up conversations. So I want to circle back around, but first I want to hear, like, what do you think are those pieces when you're like, your Pride event that you hosted, and I know because me and you talked about like how everybody's takeaways, like people were like, oh my God, this was amazing, and they felt so close to themselves and each other and like expression. So will you kind of like break down the pieces that you feel like brought that kind of a feeling, or like, I don't know if we want to use like business terms, a result?
You mean from the event?
Yeah, like what were the pieces? Like what do you think, if you could like break it down? I know sometimes like for me, like in leadership, when I'm like, doing my magic, like holding space for groups, sometimes I don't really know. But like if I'm asked, then I can like kind of like break down little pieces that I feel like are important. Like what would you say?
I think what's really important is getting people to connect, right? Like connect in a real way, like a real vulnerable way, where we're actually sharing some real truth about ourselves. And it could take some time. Like you want to start with some like, ice-breaking questions, but like, questions that evokes just like the truth of your heart, your spirit, something that makes you feel vulnerable. And then, allowing the group, I think, to practice that heart-based fertile listening, as I call it. Because then it's like, oh, you're actually building friendship in this room. Yeah, sure. It's like you're helping people to explore themselves, but it's the friendship piece. It's a friendship piece in that heart connection, especially with a stranger that you maybe met like an hour ago. Like that's super beautiful, and so I feel like that's part of it. And then something around like, people come into these spaces because they want to come back into their bodies too, right? So it's like, yeah, this outside world is so distracting, or you have to feel like you have to put walls up or your guard up, but this container where you're holding space for people to come back into their body, their creative genius, their power, with the connection pieces with people, I think it really amplifies it.
Yeah.
It really amplifies the sensation of like, wow, like I am this powerful being and I'm not alone in it. I have struggles too, and these people have struggles too, but we can do this together. And when you have that common theme, right? Like you're coming together because of a common theme, whether that's because of a movement or a cause or a mission, or in this case, it's around like supporting queer women to rise up as a new leaders of this world. So it's like, oh, like when you're connecting that with that commonality, it's just like brings so much more togetherness and just like amplification, I think, of your power.
Yeah.
So
Oh
yeah.
my gosh, you made me tear up like so much when you were just talking about the like friend piece. that really
Mm-hmm.
touched me. Like I just felt it. And I think it's because I've been having conversations with some of our other mutual friends
Mm-hmm.
around even just women in general and like friendship, and how we forget sometimes that it's a relationship. Like it
Mm-hmm.
takes, energy and love and nurturing to actually be in community in general. But then there's also this like women being in community with each other.
Yeah. That's
Um,
true. That's true. Because I've had someone say, like, they're not in circles with women often, that there's a lot of fear. And then one, it's like if they're showing up and also honoring their sexuality at the same time, that's huge,
yeah,
and I think I just lost my train of thought. Yeah, I feel like creating friendship in an environment that feels really like uplifting and empowering just makes it like really special.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
so good. I know like some of my favorite pieces of feedback that women have told me being in my circles have been like, for the first time, I felt accepted by women for the first time in my whole life. And these are women that are like in their 40s. And I was
Yeah.
like I was just, for me, that is just everything. I mean, acceptance and non-judgment is like some of my like highest values.
Yeah.
When I hear that, it's just like, yes. And I think that's what we're talking about here, like in the communities that we're building, like reconnecting to those values and those bigger whys of like that
Yeah.
pull us forward.
That's the thing. That's the thing. It's like when you're that is that big vision or the inspiration. And yeah, you just said something too. It's like non-judgment. It's a judgment-free space. Because everyone wants to feel not judged.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's
So
just
like
like, yeah.
how do you, I'm curious, how do you create that kind of space? Because obviously we can't guarantee that
Right.
people won't feel judged, right?
Right.
But there's a lot we can do to set up that kind of space and community. So what are some of the thoughts that you have on doing that?
I think like the most important thing is us as leaders setting that example,
Yeah,
right? Setting the
I
example and
agree.
perhaps maybe like laying down some, I don't know, some like expectations or not rules, or you can call them rules if you want to, but it's like, you want to set an intention for a space and make it loving, inviting, welcoming. We want to practice respect or whatever it may be. Because perhaps you're having an event that is, you're focused on, I don't know, you're focused on heart connection. So it's hard to have heart connection. You have having judgment going on in the space, right? So I think it's good as a leader to set an intention in the beginning, because that sets the grounding foundation for the event or the community or the group.
Yeah.
Sometimes people forget this. They don't set intentions. I've been in spaces where you don't set an intention. And then
Yeah.
therefore there's some like things going on that people have been uncomfortable with, So it's just like,
Yeah.
you really want to set the intention in the beginning.
Yeah, totally. And I know you know my story, and I've shared it a few times around like a community that I was in where I felt like super judged. And I realized like coming back, like when I unwound that and I'm like, why did that happen? Like, I can take part of my responsibility. I can also see like, you know, there were lots of different moving parts. But then what I came back to was like, oh my God, there was no like agreements made.
Mm-hmm.
For me, like the leader wasn't modeling it very well either. Like if the agreements were wanting to be made, like it just, so I realized that was like a big learning for me of like, oh, that's why like
Yeah.
I haven't had something like that happen in my groups. It's because I'm very intentional about
Very
like doing that.
intentional
Not
about it. Yeah.
it might in the future and then I'll have to deal with it because I'm not
Yeah.
perfect. But yeah, I think it's a very important piece.
Yeah, and that's something that I think it takes awareness. If you're new at like leading like a group or a community or something like that, then it's like you start to build awareness over time of, I guess, how do you create that safety? Um, but yeah, it's like making sure, yeah, like you have your intentions set in place. Maybe you have some rules or something like that to like set the container.
Yeah, yeah. And that everybody buys in. Like I know one thing that I
Yeah.
always ask is like, is everybody in agreement? Does anybody have anything they want to contribute? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I know one thing that I've also done in the past that I learned from someone else when I saw her leading was asking the question, what would cause you to feel unsafe? And then
Oh,
people
that's a good question.
share. And then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, okay, good. Can we all agree, to this? Or
Mhm.
what would help you feel more accepted or safe? And then people just get to like feel like they're part of creating that space so that they can fully open up.
I love that. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, super good. Okay, so I want to ask you, do you mind going down that path of the masculine and feminine? I'm just so curious, like
Oh
what,
man. Okay.
we don't have to.
No, we
I'm just
can.
really curious. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay. I was just curious, like, I mean, you can just share your experience of like what I think I understand based on what you shared just a few minutes ago of like what prompted you, right, to do the post.
Mhm.
But maybe you just want to share a little bit about that, and then also like the responses that you got, because I didn't actually read all the
Oh
responses.
my God, I have over 176 comments.
Crazy. Okay, so
I
like
don't know what happened.
yeah, well, that's one of the things that I want to ask you about, like, and this is such a great example, right? So we can go into the masculine and feminine if you want, but I think the biggest piece here is just I admire you so much in how you are able to prompt very powerful conversations, even on social media. It just like blows my mind, and you're so great at like.
Mhm.
I think for me, I protect myself a little bit because I'm not a great space holder on social media. Like for me, it feels like, oh, like, like I want to hear people's comments, but I don't want to hear like lots of discussion. Like I'd rather do that in
Yeah.
person. So maybe that's part of my block. But I'm curious for you, like, what do you think are those pieces for you? Like, why are you so good at that? And how do you do that? And how do so many people comment?
I
Share a
don't.
little bit about that.
I don't even know it was like I didn't do. It wasn't like a strategy or anything that I didn't know I was going to get a lot of comments on that post. Like I was just like, I'm getting tired of hearing like, what the heck? Like a lot of people around me talk about the divine feminine and divine masculine. I'm like, what the heck are y'all talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, okay, like, and I watch people I listen to people talk about it or see people write about it, but I'm not like sure what they're really talking about. So I'm just like, wow, what are you talking about here? And like, I've heard some friends explain to me, but I'm still learning about it too, but I feel like there's a lot for me. I feel like it's been this like social conditioning or social like gender roles and the way we're supposed to be or something like in relationship. So, or how we're supposed to be in the world. So, I've been to events where like I've been told, hey, you need to step more into your divine feminine. I'm just like, you know what the heck is that supposed to even mean? I literally had someone tell me like, oh, you need to wear more dresses to like be in your power and like be your divine feminine. I was like, what the heck are you talking
That's
about?
so weird.
It's so weird. So I'm like, what does this really mean? So that's why I asked that. Yeah.
So what did you have any like interesting comments or things that you were like, oh, okay. Like
Oh, you mean for my post?
yeah.
I think the only thing, the consistent like theme that I was getting was just like, is consciousness like split into two?
Mm-hmm.
I do two different types of energies. There's like masculine and feminine, which I
Yeah.
guess is like, made up in like the universe or whatever, or like in people too. But, or one friend was telling me is that she uses it as a framework. Is not attached to gender, like as a framework that she uses to help people to get balanced in their lives or in their bodies. So that way they're like really reaching their full potential. I'm like, okay, that's a cool explanation. But I guess where my question is like, why do the words even still like why, if it's just a framework and it's not attached to gender, then why are they still using words that come from like sex and sexuality, right?
Yeah, it is super interesting. I heard I'll have to try to find that and see if I can link it in the show notes for this episode. I think it was one of my mentors was talking about a couple of different words that somebody else uses that like
Some people are saying they say use yin and yang.
for me, I like to say doing and being. I mean,
Okay, I like
that's
that.
the most basic, right?
Doing and
It's
being.
like literally the feminine energy is just a being receiving energy, which is non-doing. And the masculine is just forward movement ahead, and which is the doing, action. Like that's the most basic for me. And it seems just really like practical. So yeah, I just think, so I just want to acknowledge you because I love that like since I've known you, and maybe you've always been like this, you're just so great at opening up those kind of conversations. And I think if I had to share like why you're so great, it's definitely the energy that you bring. Yeah, it's not like a strategy. And like what I really want people to know is that if there's that fire in your belly of either like passion about something or curiosity, which it sounds like you had both.
Yeah, curiosity.
Yeah, super curious, right? And it's like open, then those are the great conversation starters. So like if you're listening, you're like, man, I want to build community.
I'm not the type of person that questions things,
Yeah.
I'm the type of person that questions things, but like I'm kind of like outside the box. And especially when things really trigger me around like gender expectations, I'm just like, dude, like this is weird. So I need to like ask, like, where is this coming from?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I just think it's good because it goes back to the community building piece. Like if you're not willing to like have these kind of conversations and start them and like, open up this safety and non-judgment around people's opinions, then community is going to flop really fast.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also like, there's this experience of all sorts of like expression happening like in our culture, people experimenting with ways to be visible. And so it's like, there's a huge challenge happening with, how like there's certain teachers or people saying like, oh yeah, you need to be more of this or that. But like, there's people really showing up and like being their like authentic selves and really like owning it, and that's making it, just giving other people permission to just like come and be themselves too.
Yeah. I was just sharing on Adria, our mutual friend Adria DeCourt. She interviewed me on her podcast, and I brought up this point that I don't talk about a ton, but I want to start talking about more, is like only you know what is authentic for you.
Sure.
And we get it kind of twisted in society where we're like, even authenticity has expectations. Like, so if somebody says, oh my God, you're so authentic. Okay, that's nice. And what I want people to do is ask themselves, what is authentic for me? Right. Because like when I was like super happy Pollyanna all the time, and I was like, performing to please people told me I was authentic all the time, but I wasn't being authentic to myself. Some days I was, because I'm generally pretty happy. However, there were many days where I like, if I would have had a much lower, more, just kind of whatever energy, it's not good or bad, that would have been more authentic for me. So I just caution like people, to really ask themselves and feel in alignment with themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's the thing. It's like, my hope is that any type of event or gathering I do, it's like, I just want people to show up as themselves, in a judgment-free space. And because we already have so much judgment out there in the world, so it's just like coming to a place where like people can just let go, and put their guards down. And maybe you want to show up in your pajamas, that's cool. Like I have no, I don't care. I just want people to really ground with themselves and feel themselves,
Yeah. Have you ever had a time where you felt like you were judged, and like, would you be willing to share what happened and how you got through that and what you learned? Or do you have like a story?
I mean, okay. I just when you asked me that question, it just brought me back to a memory I had when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So I probably should show you a picture, but like I used to have longer hair in high school.
Whoa! I have not known you with long hair.
Probably as long as yours.
Really? Whoa.
Yeah, and then like one day I was like, I think I was like 16 or 17. And then one day I was like, you know, I'm just gonna cut this off. Cut this off. And then I mean, back then I didn't know what the heck I was gonna do with my hair, but I just wanted to chop it off, you know, and yeah, it shocked people. You know, it was like the most vulnerable I ever felt in my life. You know, like I didn't, my parents weren't really supportive of it either. So I felt like I was doing this whole thing by myself. And so like going to school, it's like, yeah, you get these judging looks and just like concerns and just like, you just feel like not safe, you know, especially when you're a teenager. And so it's like, that's kind of the first time where I felt like, oh my God, I feel like I did something wrong. But luckily, you know, I had a girlfriend at the time, my first girlfriend. And, you know, it's funny because like when she first saw me after I got my haircut, she got super scared. She's like, oh shit. Like, and she like ran to another room, you know? I was
Oh my gosh.
what did I do?
Oh my God,
you know?
that must have been so hard.
I know. It's like my parents don't like me cutting my hair and my girlfriends like my short hair. Like, what the heck do I do? My high school's all looking at me, you know? And so anyways, but it took time. It took some, you know, it took a few hours or so for her to like get comfortable with the change. And then after that, she was like, oh my God, it's so hot, you know? So I was like, okay, that's a good sign. So it's like, you know, it's just society and myself or people around me had to get used to it.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you're embodying like a new image of yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And sometimes like even, I mean, family, friends, loved ones are like one beast, I've noticed. For me, like the closer the people are to me, the harder it is. But then there's also yourself,
Yeah.
right? Like you getting used to like the changes that you're making and like the identities that we assign to ourselves are just sometimes so crazy. Like that's always the first step for me when I'm like working with people. It's releasing all those identities, like good and bad, if we want to like put them into categories, because they're just like, you know, if you're going to continue to show up in your leadership, like identities don't serve. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's really like helpful for people to hear, you know, it's like you make a change for you and then, yeah, people are just going to take some time to get used to it, but they'll be okay. Even if they'll
be okay.
But they'll be fine. Like,
I mean, I think the most important thing is just like do what you want for you, you know, and staying true to yourself. And that's kind of been like my thing. Just like I need to be able to be true to myself and really design my life, my, you know, just, you know, really honoring that, you know.
Yeah. Well, as we wind down to the last few minutes, I'm curious, like, what's lighting you up right now? Like, what are you really excited about?
I guess I'm pretty excited about like new possibilities and seeing what's possible and you know, creating community and, you know, seeing how we all evolve as leaders as well. So, because I like being around people who are making a change in the world or, you know, in our neighborhoods and things like that, like how we all rising up to like support each other and supporting our community. Yeah.
Yes, I still see you doing remember how you were sharing with me your idea around I'm a goddess too?
I know, I still want to do that actually. It's a
I
thing.
love that
I get a lot of ideas all the time, and there's some ideas I take action on, some I don't. But that's an idea that I still kind of want to do. But we'll see.
Yeah, and it's still with me too. So like,
oh really?
Yeah, like I feel that for you. For those of you guys watching, Cindy was sharing with me. I don't know how many months this was ago, but
back in like February. It's been a while now.
Yeah, because it was right after the new year, I think. And there was a lot of changes happening, but you had this awesome idea for like the campaign around I am a goddess too, basically. Will you share? You want to share like a line around what that was?
Oh gosh, so it's funny that you're asking me this because it kind of aligns with why I'm so triggered by the whole like divine feminine, divine masculine thing, and then like goddess thing. And like, don't get me wrong, like I respect those terms, but when it comes to like the visibility or the way women and people should look. So the whole goddess thing, it's like, you know, I've seen circles or imagery or paintings, like what a goddess looks like. It's like when a woman's like in her power, she looks really feminine, she's got really long hair, like she's wearing something like really long, but like clothing wise, right? So I'm just like, this doesn't really relate to me, and I'm sure it doesn't relate to a lot of people. And so it's just like, I can be a goddess too. I am a goddess too. I just am a different type of. Yeah. So that's kind of where it came from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I mean, even me, you know, I teach my 3 archetypes, and that's different forms of energy and embodiment. And the sexy feminine really fucks people up because I'm like, they're like, oh my God, I don't even like, you know, and like most of the women that follow me are, I think, are straight. And even like, they're like getting triggered around sexy feminine, the word sexy. And I was like, look,
it shouldn't be sexualized all the time.
Yeah, but the thing about sexy is that you get to own what that is for you.
Right.
It's not, but people's ideas. So it's really interesting because I've wanted to kind of like, I've been like, oh, should I change the name of that? Maybe it needs a new name. And then I'm like, no, it doesn't. It's actually helping. So maybe there's something for you here too. It's helping to like trigger, like, why do we have that, you know, identity in our mind when sexy and goddess, they're bigger terms and bigger like energies that are actually like however we want to embody them.
Yeah.
Up to us, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I know there's also, I don't know if you've seen it, maybe this would be like inspiration as well. There's like a goddess deck that has like a bunch of different ethnicities. Do you know what I'm talking about? And like,
Chani, maybe Chani had it.
Yeah, Chani, our friend Chani Jacobson, who I've also interviewed on this show. Yeah, she has that deck, and there's a whole bunch of different ethnicities. They might still be dressed more in like traditional feminine, but I know some of them are like I don't know. There's more of a range, I guess.
That's good. Is it more representation?
Yeah, way more representation.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, that's the thing I like, is like seeing more representation of different people.
Yeah.
You know? Like, we don't all just look one way. We all look different.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just thinking, I was reading the Red Tent book, I don't know, a few months ago. And in the Red Tent, they talk about like all the different goddesses that they used back then. And like, they weren't all super traditionally like feminine. Like there's a lot of like goddesses that are just like however they want to be. So I don't know. I feel you. I think that this is like just a good conversation for all of us to be questioning around, you know, what we're hooking into around these identities. Yeah.
Thanks for speaking about it, because I think it's kind of important. So
it's very important. I love you, Cindy. You're amazing. Is there anything that you just want to like leave people with, words of anything I didn't ask you, or just words of wisdom, or something that's on your heart?
I guess I would like to say, what I want to say, be true, be you. That's all I want to leave you with.
I like it. That's good. And where is your favorite place for people to connect with you?
Oh, you can go to my website. It's cindymanit.com. I'm also on Facebook, as you already know from this conversation. So you can find me on Facebook too.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to put all of Cindy's links to social media, her website, anything that we may have mentioned in this show.
Instagram, yeah.
Yeah, over on the show notes page, which this is episode 27. So it'll be jessicatomlinson.com/show-27 for everybody that wants to connect with Cindy. I highly recommend it. She's amazing. Lots of big things.
Oh, thanks, Jess.
You're so welcome. All right, everyone. We will see